Hi, my name's Rachel, and I'm a music therapy student here at Radford University, and I will be presenting on the biometric effects of playing marimba on balance and movement, and this is an objectivist case study. I'm interested in it because back when I was first learning to play my instrument in middle and high school, I had a lot of wrist injuries and wrist pain. In my right hand, I broke my trapezius bone, which is right here. It's right under your thumb. I also had what's called a triangular fibrocartilage complex tear, or a TFCC tear, which occurs between your radius and ulna on the flat part of your wrist. And I had de Quervain's tenosynovitis, which it affects the abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis tendons that run through the first dorsal compartment. Basically what happens is those two tendons swell and then begin to rub up against that compartment through which they run. And I had to have multiple surgeries for this, and I had physical and occupational therapy twice a week for 6 weeks post-surgery. My occupational therapist later suggested that I use my experience in marching band as a player in the front ensemble to augment my occupational therapy exercises. So, what is an objectivist case study? Well, it's an intensive examination of an individual with the use of quasi-experimental research designed to determine the effect of an independent variable on one or more dependent variables. Basically, you take one person, being me, put them in a room, and take data. I put me in a room and took data while I was playing marimba to see how my musical training has affected my biometric readings, basically. I chose it because I wanted to learn what health looks like. I've been playing the marimba for about 10 years, and I have pretty decent techniques, and I wanted to establish baselines for future research trials, but also use some music therapy clinical settings. So there are 3 words that I'm going to be using a lot in this presentation. The first is marimba. A marimba is an 8-foot-long rosewood instrument that you strike with 2 to 4 mallets. And it creates earthy and woody tones that really can't be replicated on really any other instrument. I also will be using the term electromyographies. Electromyographies, or EMGs, are small electrical devices that go on your muscles to measure their electrical stimulation. So I put them on my forearms, on my brachioradialis muscles, or what are considered the percussionist's chops. It's what we have really strong of to play our instrument. We also have force plates. Force plates are plates that are flush with the ground that measure in newtons how far you are pushing up, sideways, and forward. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So there are lots of different types of techniques that are used. I use a different grip than most American percussionists because of the injuries I've had. On the left you can see Stevens grip. Stevens grip is when you place the bottom of a mallet on the meaty part of your thumb, balance it on the top first knuckle of your left hand or right hand, place your thumb on top of it, grasp the bottom of it with your middle finger, and then grasp the second mallet with the extra 2 fingers. To play, you pull up right where de Quervain's tenosynovitis affects your wrists, right on the thumb. So when I was learning to play percussion, my percussion instructor decided to have me play what's called Burton's grip. Burton's grip is when you take a mallet and you grasp it like a drumstick, either to eat or to play with, and you place the other mallet underneath the first mallet and hold on to it with your middle finger this way. This puts less stress on those tendons that I had such problems with. I used 4 different techniques. Double verticals, which is when all 4 mallets hit at the same time. Single independent, which is when you hit 1 mallet on 1 bar consistently. Single alternating, which is when you move from 1 mallet to another. And triple lateral, which is when you use the rebound of 1 stroke to make the next stroke. You'll see a video of all of these later, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. I also played a piece called Pure Imagination, which requires a lot of weight shifting. I chose this piece specifically for weight shift. I also had each technique worked on at a very specific tempo, simply because each one of these EMGs and force plates only take 8 seconds of data at a time. So my procedure was that I submitted an IRB application and got accepted. I then had to tackle the challenge of getting a marimba up to Peters Hall. Basically what I did was I gathered another percussionist from my department and asked him to roll it up the side of the street with me, as you can see in the picture on the screen. I did this 2 times. I did it to do a pilot study, and that is just making sure we're getting the data we expected and making sure everything's working right. And then I did it another time to collect data. And I collected EMG data, which is measured in millivolts, and force plate data, which is measured in newtons. I then did data analysis and interpretation with Dr. Salih from the Exercise Science and Health Education Department, who also gave me access to the Biometrics lab. So, my EMG data. Here is a video of me playing double verticals, so you get a better idea of what this looks like. So you can see that each stroke has a very particular strike, or has a very particular peak in the data. And this is important simply for relaxation purposes, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Single independent we didn't get a video for simply because of all of the mix-up with the spread of COVID-19. But you can see that each time I struck, I have complete relaxation in my other hand if that hand is not the one playing. Green is left and red is right. So when my left hand is playing, my right hand is not doing anything, whereas when my right hand is playing, my left hand is doing very little. Single alternating, here's a video. So you can see I'm doing 2 strikes with each hand, and you can see 2 strikes with each hand in this data. 1, 2, 1, 2, and so on. Triple lateral, the data looks a little bit messier simply because of how quickly you have to move to create these strokes. So I wanted to show an example of unhealthy EMG data versus healthy EMG data. On the left, you actually see the EMG data of someone's back while they are bending over. You can see the back muscle never completely relaxes. It is constantly firing, which is really bad for musculoskeletal health in the long run. Whereas in my data, you can see complete relaxation in between every single stroke. I go all the way down in terms of electrical stimulation. Also, the amount of electrical activity in my forearms was 0.018 millivolts off, which is minuscule when compared to people who have not had musical training and when compared to each other. This shows that my arms are more similar in strength and endurance than most others, and this is likely due to my training in music. So this is an example of force plate data. You can see that the data actually collects in 3 spots, in your left foot, your right foot, and the combined. They also collect in 3 different axes, the X, Y, and Z axes. The X axis is how much from the inside to the outside of your foot you're moving. The y-axis, which is what we'll be primarily looking at, is measuring how much force is going straight up, and the z-axis is how much is going from heel to toe. We actually found an unhealthy pattern in my behavior in this one. We can see that I hold most of my weight on my left foot when I am playing exercises. You can also see each individual stroke in my body. It's really interesting to see because I thought I had fairly good body health while playing. So it's interesting to see that I actually don't, and there's somewhere to make an improvement. On the right, you actually see my weight shifting while I am playing a piece. You can see that there's a lot more weight shift going on in this piece. I want to show you just a really quick snippet of the piece that I was playing, even though we don't have the video from me playing it. Please excuse my cat. Her name is Raja. She wouldn't leave my room when I went to record. Here you go. So you can see, hold on, you can see that her body is constantly moving around the instrument. Sorry. So I actually had a really hard time finding articles about music therapy and percussion. I used keywords such as music therapy, keyboard percussion, marimba, lower body, upper body, and rehabilitation, and still only found a few sources to support my point. But the sources I did find discussed neurologic music therapy and specifically percussion and music therapy. So according to Lagasse and Hardy, rhythm can be used in treating balance and proprioception in children with autism spectrum disorders. And due to the neurological differences in the brains of people with autism, some people with autism struggle with certain music movements, such as walking from heel to toe and like balancing with their eyes closed. Neurologic music therapy, or NMT, is a type of music therapy outlook that focuses on neurological rehabilitation and treatment, and it often includes addressing motor impairments. They used the concept of rhythmic entrainment to the lower limbs of the body through rhythmic auditory stimulus and therapeutic instrumental music performance to address upper body movement techniques. Their study found that the use of these techniques has statistically significant differences in clients' perception of fatigue and endurance. According to Matney, however, in terms of percussion and music therapy specifically, according to Matney in 2015, he found that 53% of the articles published in Journal of Music Therapy and Music Therapy Perspectives, which are the two main music therapy journals in the United States, does not specify the type of percussion used in music therapy processes. And the 76% of the articles that do tackle percussion in music therapy only use non-pitched percussion and membramophones or drums with heads. Very few articles discuss pitched percussion specifically, and practices in music therapy seem to leave out a large portion of instruments that provide the same immediate response as drums, but with different timbres and potential benefits. Marimba and other keyboard percussion instruments use balance and upper body strength, and therefore should seem logical to include it in treating and rehabilitating diagnoses that affect movement in these regions. So almost any diagnosis can benefit from music therapy. That can go from older adults who live in group care facilities, to young children with disabilities, to adults with no diagnosis at all. But I propose that people who could really benefit from the use of marimba include clients who have had cardiovascular accidents or strokes, autism due to their decreased senses of proprioception and vestibular senses, and those with movement impairments due to marimba's physicality and nature. According to AMTA, which is the American Music Therapy Association, which is the national group for music therapists must be competent in voice, piano, and guitar and percussion. And we must utilize basic percussion techniques on several standard and ethnic instruments. A marimba is a standard instrument, and it is never used in music therapy treatment. And I think that it's really important to address this. We have to understand the benefits of each one of our instruments, even if it's just vague understandings and what can be taught in a semester of undergrad. Having an understanding of these instruments would be really, really helpful. Also, having more exposure to percussion instruments like the marimba, vibraphone, and other keyboard percussion could really benefit from, or music therapists could really benefit from having that exposure, from understanding what percussion instruments look like other than just a tubano or a djembe, which are two types of hand drums that are commonly used in music therapy practice. There are challenges to using marimba in music therapy. I'm not gonna lie about that. It's big and difficult to move. It's about 8 feet long, and you will never once hear me say, oh, this is a cinch to move. It's so difficult to move. They're also quite expensive. For a new Yamaha 5-octave professional rosewood marimba, it is $13,000. That is not a little bit of money. So I propose that music therapists work closely with school systems because many schools and universities do have access to this kind of instrument. It might not be a 5-octave, it might be a 4 1/3 octave or a 4 1/2 octave, but that's fine as long as it's in decent condition and they have permission from the school to use it. Also, I have recently found a 4 1/3 octave Yamaha marimba that only costs $2,800. On malletshop.com, and also considering other types of keyboard percussion to use, such as vibraphone or xylophone or glockenspiel, to address these same challenges. These instruments aren't nearly quite as long, but you can still see benefits for upper body mobility and coordination and some lower body balancing. I think that using marimba in music therapy is worth it because it increases upper body strength, endurance, and coordination, and it increases your ability to shift weight between your legs. Also, I think it's important to acknowledge that many music therapists, or not music therapists, professional percussionists, report having repetitive motion injuries. So it's important to understand that complete relaxation in between each stroke is the way to avoid those. According to Zaza, Charles, and Muzinski, 68% of percussionists have experienced repetitive motion injuries in their lifetime. So I think it's really important that percussionists learn how to completely relax their body in between each strike in order to prevent against these injuries. I learned the importance of muscle activation and relaxation, and the importance of equality of strength from hand to hand, and the complete relaxation between strokes to prevent against wrist injuries. And I also learned about balance and what bad habits I personally have, like keeping most of my weight on my left side. We learned that this can lead to complications such as wearing down of the cartilage in your knees and hips, and we also learned that you can't always see these complications. When I was doing this data, Dr. Salih was running the computers, And he was watching me, and he's an expert in exercise health and science. And he did not notice that I was holding most of my weight on my left side. So it is important that we understand that you can't see everything that's happening in a person's body, and it takes careful consideration of the person playing and potentially objectivist proof to address these things. I want to thank Dr. DeMeo for helping me accomplish the goals I've set out since my freshman year, Dr. Salih for helping me with understanding and analyzing my data and for the use of the Biometrics lab, and Dr. Sandrell for helping me learn more about my instrument, expanding my understanding of the physicality of the instrument. And these are my sources that I referenced in today's presentation. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great day and you're staying safe and well during these weird times.